She's a passionate advocate for education and is a regional impact manager with My Future NC. Please welcome to the stage, Angie Jenkins.
Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you today and to share a bit about my future and about myself. I am an advocate for education, and I just love kids, and I love being able to help provide students with the greatest opportunities and the greatest advantages possible so they can thrive and succeed in their environments. And so if we go on to the next slide, there's a quote that I want to frame this conversation by. If you look at this quote, I love the way that it amplifies the fact that equity isn't a slogan. I know that, we've had a tendency to politicize equity, or it sounds kind of cool when you think about equity. But when I talk about equity, and when we talk about equity at My Future NC, equity is how we hope that the students' lives will be transformed by education. How do we do that? By being able to provide them with opportunities to have access to the best opportunities possible to thrive in their environment. And if you go next, there's a graphic that you've probably seen a lot. This graphic has been redrawn, redone many times. And what I love about it is it absolutely provides the opportunity for us to see, okay, we have students that are individuals that obviously have some disadvantages in their lives. And then the second picture shows if we were to apply an equity lens to that, we are providing them with the leverages that they need to succeed. But what I love about this particular picture is saying, let's go beyond that. Who built the fence anyway? Let's remove the fence and let's provide students with an opportunity so that they can thrive no matter what. And I love this because it gives students the ability to feel that they can succeed in any and most environments. As we look at the next slide, there's a quote it says, that I have here. It says, many of today's students face barriers to equitable education. Well, it makes me think of my life as an educator. I've encountered some amazing students. I've seen students do some amazing things. I've seen them, go through and they matriculate through high school and they go on and do, have these awesome careers, and many have totally exceeded my career, okay? And then you have those students that has had some bumps in the road. And their path to matriculating through high school has not always been as easy, quote unquote, as others may have had in their own lives. What's quite interesting here is, and what I love about, for instance, My Future NC and our organization, we understand that students absolutely have barriers. And one of the barriers that has been quite obvious is, and all of us have experienced, has been the one imposed by COVID. I know we're tired of talking about this COVID topic, but in education, COVID has really had a tremendous impact on students' learning opportunities and their growth, their opportunity to thrive and grow in that environment. And that particular challenge was placed by that digital disadvantage that they had. I'm from a rural part of North Carolina. And I don't know about in this area, and I say that rhetorically because I know you all and your students dealt with this as well, had limited access to Wi-Fi, limited access to broadband. And so with that, many students were not able to, quote unquote, thrive in that environment. And much of what we have seen is that the results of that can be seen in the data. Unfortunately, North Carolina's students have some barriers and some challenges that we have to help them overcome. And unfortunately, COVID did not help that. But let's think about this. Beyond those potential barriers that we think of, the traditional ones, you think of like social barriers that students may encounter. What about those students that have those invisible disabilities? And I like how Des pointed that out earlier. Students that during this time dealt with tremendous depression. I saw a statistic that said that I think it was like 46% of students during that time actually had 1 to 2 depressive episodes. Think about this. I also saw another statistic that 3.5 thousand students in North Carolina, listen to this part, experienced loss of a parent or a guardian. How do we support those students? How do we best support them in their learning environment? One of the things that I want to point out as we go on to the next slide is my future NC. We've been fortunate enough to have this mission to ensure that all students have access to a quality education. We've been able to help leverage that in our local communities. And we're doing that by empowering those that are in position to help students that need it most. Essentially, we're helping to promote and encourage champions within local communities. We can go on to the next slide. My Future NC is a nonprofit organization that's focused on educational attainment. We're focused on closing those educational gaps. And I want to show you some things here. This is some recent data that has been captured. My Future NCs, we track 18 key performance indicators, and it pretty much says, how are students doing? How are students learning? Are students thriving in their environment? And if you see here, there are 4 major indicators that we look at. It's academic readiness, college and career access, post-secondary completion, and labor market alignment. And as you can see with the green check, there are some areas where we're trending upward, right? But then there are also some areas where we're trending downward when we look at readiness and completion and career and college access. If you go to the next slide, I want to drill down here. This shows demographically the students that were impacted the most, particularly during this time during COVID. So this is the most recent data that we have. If you look in the center of this graphic, you'll see that in the red, the students that experienced the greatest disadvantage were those that are in the Hispanic, Black, and American Indian populations. That downcline of their learning and their growth, it has not only happened in the academic readiness column, but look at the college and career access as well, okay? If you go on to the next slide. One of the things that the data has also shown us is that through this season and through that time, that 9.5, well, first let me show you, 16,000 kids in 2021 did not graduate high school on time. 9.5 kids on average drop out every year. Why are they dropping out? What are the barriers that they're dealing with that's keeping them from matriculating through high school? 53% of those were Black and Hispanic students. We go on to the next slide. I want to ask you, with the fact that I've thrown all this data at you today, after 5, what could this mean for you? What could this mean for you as we're sitting here in this room? I want to propose a few things for you. If you go to the next slide, I want to propose that it causes you to want to get engaged. So how can you become engaged? You could become engaged by just simply finding the opportunities to volunteer in our local schools. And because of where you are and where you are and the experiences that you have, there are many students who would be very appreciative of having mentors or having the opportunities to intern or having those opportunities to have you even sit on student advisory boards. And so I want to just encourage you at any point possible, if you can be a champion for children through your volunteerism, please choose to volunteer. And in my close, I want to read a quote to you. If I could find it here. And it is about an amazing educational advocate, and it's a pretty powerful quote. and she's known for equity. And the quote is, I cannot find my quote. We can edit that part out, and as we're streaming live, doing my 100 slides, here we are. Rita Pearson. She said, every child deserves a champion, an adult who would never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they could possibly be. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Angie Jenkins. Now it's your time to ask questions about accessibility in education. Raise your hand, you'll get your question answered. You realize this isn't TV and I can see you, right? We're all on the same page there. That's good. All right, I have a question then.
Sure.
Judging all of you. I have a question. So from the perspective of an educator in the public school system, what are things that they can do on their own, outside of the administration, outside the curriculum, to make things more accessible for the entirety of their student population?
That is a great question. And there are so many different ways. You know, it starts with just being a champion for children. And when you're a champion for children, you are aware of their individual needs. And so realizing that, and like that larger graphic that was shown, every child is not equal. Every child is different. And so when you understand the different individual needs of children, and then you can step forward and meet those needs. And so that could be in the way of some of the things that I proposed at the end. You know, providing that sense of mentorship, or if you're seeing a student struggling, you may not know that they may have a vision problem, but you see them struggling with reading, taking the time to ask the questions, taking the time to look at the data, taking those times to have those deeper conversations, and you may find out, hey, the student needs glasses. And so it's just those personal touches that you take with individual students that make educators amazing to me. And so we're doing it all the time. Sometimes we're going to games when, you know, students don't ask you, you know, hey, can you come to my game? Or recital, or whatever it may be. And so it's just being the champion, because what I realize is a lot of students don't have champions, and that's the reality about it.
As the child of a public school teacher, completely agree with that. All right, we do have a question right up here up front.
As I was driving to somewhere today, I was listening to the radio, and they mentioned that we are missing a whole lot of teachers in North Carolina right now. And we have huge numbers of teacher vacancies. And it seems like that's the biggest problem in many ways, both in getting competent teachers and getting teachers who are going to be role models for students and mentors for students.
Absolutely.
How do we approach that, and also ensure that we make sure that we're thinking in terms of accessibility, so that all different people, so that teachers who have disabilities may be also in the school systems? And maybe, do you have some thoughts on, maybe the public school system sucks?
I would definitely say the public school system does not suck. I am a public school educator by trade. I'm a proponent for public education. I'm a proponent of education, period. You asked some really great questions. And, I tend to, when I look at education, I tend to see it as opportunities for districts to really be creative. You have to be creative when you're recruiting for teachers. And my particular area is career and technical education. And so when we're talking about providing opportunities for students is around like career growth, career potential. We recruit folks from industry to be in our classrooms, because what better opportunity can a student learn than from someone who's a practitioner? And so there are multiple ways that we can begin to really think creatively and how we can make that happen. Even from a community college standpoint, for instance, like high school students, they've even taken time where they've had community college instructors to adjunct in for example, in a high school. Some districts will recruit internationally. And so there are multiple ways, but one of the biggest thing is, and this is Angie's opinion, okay, is that our education programs, we have to present education in a way that shows that, hey, this is a career that is really meaningful. It's not just a career that you can go into for money, but we want and we need all types of teachers, right? I don't know if I've ever seen districts advertise, and this is from my limited knowledge of, seeing advertisements, but I don't know if I've ever seen a creative marketing campaign that opens it when you said this is open for all, if it really means all, or the schools of education will open it for all, does it really mean all? And so if we could, have that message communicated, I think that's where we'll see potentially more people interested. And, of course, you can increase the salary. That would help a lot, too. So, yeah.
All right, give it up for Angie Jenkins.